We're now recording.
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Haley. Appreciate that. And good afternoon, board members and guests. And welcome to the March the 18th meeting of the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission regular meeting. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at 1:04. And as usual, we will start off the meeting with an acknowledgement. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering space, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. And we start that off at the beginning of every meeting because we acknowledge not only our past, but our present and the future going forward. So welcome everybody. We're getting into the rhythm now of our regular monthly meetings related to the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission. And as Haley now has just put up our meeting slide deck, I don't have any opening comments beyond welcome. And we are about the business of the commission. And so we have an agenda before us. You've received the agenda. And so what I would like is a motion to approve. As soon as Haley brings up the agenda, we'll have the motion to adopt the agenda as presented. So could I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Finstad. Call for the question. All in favor of the agenda as presented? Thank you, Councillor Harris. We see your hand, and we see all the other raised hands in the chat boxes, and that motion is approved unanimously. And then if you want to lower your hands, because we're going to go right on to the next motion, which is the approval of the February 18th regular board meeting minutes. They were attached to the package as well. And before I call for a motion, any errors or omissions that a board member would like to bring to our attention? Councillor Walters? You're moving it? Okay. So hearing none, Councillor Walters is approving the minutes as presented. Call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. And Councillor Harris, acknowledge your raised hand. Thank you very much. And that is carried unanimously. And all right, updated implementation plan, then over to you, Al or Josh.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll take that. Josh Cole speaking. First item on your agenda there is an update on the implementation plan. And so just for a bit of background, I think you all recall that as part of the business case, there was an implementation plan included in the business case. And because of the passage of some time, obviously we wanted to revisit this and ensure that it was still on schedule, and wanted to update it for all of you. And so while we went through that process in the past, I have to say that again, time has passed. It's quite a bit of the information and the milestones we're actually on track. So I think the good news is that we're certainly on track, and we'll highlight some of those points in just a moment on the next slide. But just a few other things to pay attention to is that, of course, the CEO recruitment continues. So that's something that I know many eyes are continuing to watch, and that we have still had the ability and built the capacity to do a lot of the startup work that we had laid out in the earliest stages of the implementation plan. So no material changes. I want to highlight a couple of things, and then go through some of the upcoming items that are kind of immediately going to be upon us. So maybe if we could go to the next slide. So here, just showing you the updated updated highlights of the implementation plan. And so as you see in Q1, we've actually knocked off quite a few of those key items. Clearly, the application to the government and approval, legal formation, and a launching of the website. And for all of those watching, EMTSC.ca is live, and minutes, agendas, and information and contact are at that website. And so that's up and running. And as you know, we've begun to stand up the finance, HR, and communications functions with the support of some contracted resources. So that's going as expected. And then, of course, we will start to turn our minds to public engagement. I want to highlight the Q2 items for you because that's upon us now. And the key, I guess the key element to all of this is that many of these we would expect to be led by a CEO that would be in place. And with that, the first, I think, key part of that is the beginning to develop a stakeholder outreach and public engagement plan. So that work would begin. The other piece of work would be the approval of the 2021 operating budget. So again, important one there. As we move further into Q3, Q4 in 2022, one of the things you'll notice is that, again, of course, some really critical pieces of work that have to happen. Specialized transit is notable in Q3, beginning to come up with a plan and a roadmap of how specialized transit would be integrated. The development of a strategic plan, another critical step that we, believe that a CEO would be integral in developing with you. And then moving towards a 2022 budget process. But what you'll notice as we move from Q3 to Q4 is that some of the more public-facing elements will begin, again, all on schedule as we expected, but they would begin to have a conversation with the broader public beyond maybe more immediate stakeholders about the commission, but also about the service delivery. And so that conversation begins in advance of developing the service plan. And I think that's critical to note because we don't want it to be a fait accompli. We need that public input on service planning. And so while it begins in Q4, the actual formation by this board of a service plan wouldn't happen till well into 2022. So those are some things to look at. And so you can see along that timeline, we've tried to highlight some of the key ones. At some point in 2022, that's when we're starting to look at, the brand being implemented for the new service and entity, public consultation activities starting to wrap up, then looking at some of the finalizing of the service design, and of course, some of the beginning of the transferring of services from municipalities to the EMTSC. And so with that, I kind of wanted to open it up to questions. This is a information item that for your information, and so that will be the motion, but certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have based on your readings of the agenda, what you're seeing here today.
Fair enough. Any questions from board members here? Just well done in putting together this overview of where we're at and where we're going. Certainly appreciate that. There's some stars against some Q2 items that will definitely be a focus of the board activity over the next little while. So thanks for highlighting that, Josh.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add to that. There's a lot to do, and it's ambitious. And I think that the good news is that outside of a few minor front end things that have stretched out, still on track. But it will be quite a bit of work to continue to keep to pace.
Fair enough. Mayor Ralph, you have a question.
Sorry, not so much a question, but just thanks for putting this together. It is aggressive, but again, been aggressive all along. So I definitely feel it's obtainable and achievable. So good work, Josh. So appreciate it. So
thank you. And certainly thanks to the full team and even some of our colleagues at the municipalities pulling this all together. But I think it's something to kind of drive activity and keep everyone on their toes for sure.
Thank you.
Right. Seeing no further questions, here's the motion that's before us. That the board accepts this information, the updated implementation plan is presented. Could I get someone to make that motion, please? Mayor Ralph, I see your hand still up. Is that?
I actually put it back up. I'd be happy to make the motion that the board accepts this information, the updated implementation plan as presented at the March 18th, 2021 board meeting.
All right, fair enough. Accept that motion. Any comments or debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Board of Directors' responsibilities.
So I'll back to me. Thank you on this one. And so, you know, we've over the last kind of, I guess, 2 or 3 meetings into our third now, dealing with a lot of these foundational pieces to get the organization and the board up and running. And so one of these important pieces is a code of conduct. I don't think I have to tell any of you as municipal councillors what the benefits of a code of conduct are and what it is, but certainly we think it's important to get into place to establish the type of culture you'd want in the organization and certainly govern some of the behaviors and guide responsibilities. A few things that I'll note about the development of this code of conduct is we obviously looked at all of your municipalities to kind of lean on them for some of the basic tenets of it. I would say it's not as detailed as municipal codes of conduct, but we certainly in our kind of jurisdictional scan and building of this code of conduct would note that it's far more comprehensive than other things we've seen for other transit entities and agencies across the country. So I think it strikes a good balance and certainly based compared to other transit entities is ahead of the pack. I also just note, I think it's important that there's some evolution of this code that will naturally happen as the organization grows. But one of the pieces in there is that that still needs to be done is to develop some of the language around the mechanisms by which the code of conduct is actually enforced. So if there ever was, you know, an instance where someone thought a board member was not in compliance with the code of conduct, how is that adjudicated and reviewed? And so that's one of the things that you would see added into the code of conduct. And so part of the recommendation here is that there would be a review, a mandated review in 6 months. And so we put that on the schedule, and that would do 2 things. It would address the language needed around some of those mechanisms that we would want to inject. But at the same time, it would also be, I think, a good point to reflect back on just to see how it's working and if changes need to be made. The other comment I'll make more generally about the code, and happy to answer questions you might have, and Bill Shores would happily do the same, is it's important to note you're still all governed by your municipal codes of conduct as town and city councilors. And so, you know, you've got, I would say, and not to mention provincial legislation. So you're very well covered in terms of kind of codes of conduct and guidelines and responsibilities. And so we still think it's important for the fledgling organization to have their own, but you know, there's quite a significant amount of coverage considering the roles you all, the other hats you wear as you sit back with your host municipalities. And so happy to answer questions, kind of anything we've presented today, or as you've gone through the code as presented in your packages.
Thanks, Josh. Well put together, by the way. You know, it was interesting because we all, as you note, Josh, work under codes of conduct as they exist in our own municipalities. And so it was not unfamiliar reading if you follow my drift.
Yeah.
Certainly the conflict of interests and the confidentiality requirements and all of the things that fall under a public body like this all exist in there. So thank you to Mr. Shores and his team, and Josh and Al and your teams for putting this together for us. I see we've got Councillor McKenzie, question, and then I see Councillor Finstad and Councillor Walters. Go ahead, Chantal.
Yes, thank you for clarifying on the, I guess on the follow through on it, because that's where I felt that it was kind of light on. However, I think that, and where I looked at it more, I guess, is on the participation side. And so I was wondering if there shouldn't be something in there though, that, you know, if a board member misses so many meetings that, you know, they potentially could be replaced. I would assume though, you know, our different municipalities would be monitoring and making sure that their representative on the board is attending. But that's where I'm just wondering, you know, as to how, you know, how do we enforce a lot of this and as a board, and that I was particularly looking at the participation part of it, but I'm not too sure, you know, I think it's great what we have. And I do think that a lot of it should fall back onto the municipalities and maybe.
Yeah, really, really good point. So in terms of the participation or attendance, and I'll ask Bill to add to this, but you know, it may as equally be as appropriately in our procedural bylaws or kind of overall bylaws, recognizing the caveat being there that each of you are here as a kind of a municipally appointed member of the board. And so there is some language about, you know, removing board members that would be found in those bylaws. And so I think that is something there. In terms of, you mentioned a really good point, which we're cognizant of, and that's why we want the review point in a few months, is that on the enforcement side. And so we didn't want to wait on that and not have a code in place that, you know, we would expect that everyone would follow and abide by anyways, and enforcement wouldn't be an issue. So we wanted to get something in place as soon as possible, and give it a bit of time to breathe, but also we would then begin to develop and get some feedback from all of you on what enforcement would be, you know, kind of best suited to this organization. If we'd rely on integrity commissioners or ombudsmen from municipalities or independent ones, lots of options there that we'd want to put in front of you and get your feedback on. Bill, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, that's everything. Thank you so much.
Councillor McKenzie, also the attendance matter we've tried to deal with in the governance bylaw. So it's essentially the same rules as councillors, except there's no automatic removal. It's a request to a municipality if a councillor misses 3 meetings unapproved or not on a commission business.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Bill. I think it was Councillor Finstad, then Councillor Walters. Go ahead, Councillor Finstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, I appreciate the fact that we're looking at this, well, early stage, if you will, of the commission being stood up. I think that everybody will understand sort of the rules of the road and move forward, and certainly hope that there's never a need for enforcement issues. But again, you can't be too prepared. I also understand that, yeah, it's going to be an evolving document, and as we move forward and as we see how things will change or unfold in the future. But I'm so happy to see that it's done early stage in the terms of the board development, and it should on its own lend us to a making sure that we're all responsible, even though we know we are within our municipalities and going forward. But just happy to see the code of conduct this early in the stage of development.
Thank you. Councillor Walters.
Thanks, Chair Broadhead. So just 2 questions. And the first question may not be an issue. I just, you know, there's been some experiences in the past where people have, you know, wherever it's happened in other parts of the country where commissions and municipalities, you know, municipal councils are on commissions and then expense both. How do you avoid that from happening? Is there something more explicit in here that says if you sort of remit an expense, it can only be to here, or it can only be to your municipality, not, and that may be creating a mountain out of a molehill, but I just wanted to flag that.
So kind of in essence, like if there's a bit of double dipping on submitting of an expense.
I was trying to avoid that word.
Sorry. Well, there it is.
Josh, if you want, I can speak to some of that in terms of the at least the board honoraria component of that. If that is coming up next on our agenda, but just in general terms, the commission is responsible for reimbursing its board members and others in terms of the business they're doing on behalf of the commission. Ultimately, the commission will view it as a responsibility of a board member to manage themselves appropriately with their home municipality. So.
But there wouldn't be circumstances where board members are remitting expenses ever. I can't.
So we're maybe getting a bit to the next item, but there would be where it's pretty prescriptive though about travel, you know, to getting to board meetings. So.
Well, I can hang tight till then because I have another question about mileage, but that's under the next item. So.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right. Well done, everyone. And again, thank you for putting this together. As has been noted by a number of our board members, we have a recommendation before us that we adopt this code of conduct. Would somebody care to move that and read it into the record? Councillor Laurie, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move that the board adopt the Board of Directors Code of Conduct as presented at the March 18th, 2021 board meeting, and that it be reviewed for suitability within 6 months considering the growth of the commission.
Thank you. I'll accept that motion. Any opening comments?
No, nothing other than the fact I'll echo some of the comments that were already said in my pleasure at seeing this come forward at such an early stage and ensuring that this is in place for ourselves as we move forward and standing the commission up and continuing to drive its success.
Thank you. Any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call the question. And all in favor, raise your hand. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to the next item.
Okay, I will take this one. So in terms of board of directors still and the topic of honorariums. So you recall back in around November during the pre-implementation stage that we went through collectively with the interim board, the discussion around board honoraria and appropriate amounts. We've done the research associated with that and worked through this information back at that point in time. So we're really bringing this forward back now here to the board for a formal approval process. You can see here the amounts are listed off between chair, directors, and both. And we should note that the honorarium amounts are annual honorarium, and then we have per diem amounts per committee meeting, as well as mileage allowances and expenses that would be permitted to be submitted by board members when conducting commission business. So it's outlined there as we discussed previously, and as you can see, in terms of the amounts per individual and per meetings, this would cover both board meetings and committee meetings as well. And in terms of processing, we would look at honoraria being paid out proportionally over the course of the year, and then per diems paid out as on a committee by committee meeting basis, as well as mileage claims. So again, just kind of reiterating what had been discussed before, these amounts are in line with other similar organizations within the region, which was one of the principles that we took a look at. So happy to open it up to any discussions or questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Munkoff-Swain.
Sorry, Wes, that was a legacy hand up, so I'll take that back. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. That's all right. Mayor Ralph, and then Councillor Walters.
Just one thing in regards to the honorarium, because of the fact that we have an election coming up, but I think if we're going to do this, I think it'd be best to be paid on a monthly basis, especially if there's any changes, etc. So at least at the end of each month. So that would just be a recommendation I would make, because maybe a board member might move or change as well. So that way, at least, as I say, you can stay on top of it on a monthly basis. So, and I believe that Councillor Walters is going to probably bring up my question on mileage, so I will leave it to him. So thanks.
Thanks
So
for
I can
that
just
comment.
address that comment. So yeah, the intent would be to process monthly, both for specific per diem amounts and the prorated portion of honoraria as well.
Okay, Councillor Walters.
Well, I'll see if Ray and I are of the same mind. So where did the 59 cents per kilometer come from? Where does that come from?
I am going to forget the exact, but it is through the federal government's reimbursement program,
Right.
like their expense. So it's tied to that particular week. And
So
when
that's what I assumed. And that moves occasionally, right?
Yes.
So should we not just note that we should do it in par with that so that we don't have to change our, fool around with this every time?
Yeah, I actually think on the slide here, it is denoted that it's determined based on and to be escalated annually. And
Sorry, it's small print.
yeah, it's trying to fit everything on. So just look below the table of proposed schedule in small font with an asterisk.
Oh, yeah. Did it say that in our agenda package? I might have missed that. If I did, I apologize. But yeah, so if that's in there and that's covered off, then good. Asked and answered. Great.
I can follow up with your question earlier, Councillor Walters, too, in terms of claims. And we did discuss this at the Audit and Finance Committee as well, meeting in advance of this. And so really the commission's responsibility is to follow its particular rules when it comes to items like this. And so the commission would look to be reimbursing board members conducting business in accordance with the commission's policy, which has been presented here. It is up to the board member to manage their responsibilities back within their home municipality accordingly in terms of claims or policies within their municipalities. It relates to reimbursements or honorary of this nature.
Okay, good enough. Thanks.
And Councillor Walters, it was not in the board package, and I'm glad it showed up on the slide deck here because, yeah, we don't want to have to be revising this on a regular basis. So thanks for the work put together on this, Al. I appreciate that. Again, we have a recommendation before the board here.
Sorry, Councillor Broadhead, I see Chantel, did you have a question still or?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chantel, go ahead.
That's okay. Yes, I had raised my hand. Yeah, I just wanted to mention two things, and the motion that we're bringing forward, and I like it. It says that we, oh, is this the motion now that's up? Because there was a motion on the last slide at the bottom where it said that they may be claimed retroactively, and this kind of speaks to Councillor Walters' comment. I know myself, my municipality pays me for these meetings, so I've actually been claiming them, and I claimed two, one in the January 26th and then one in February. And so I'm just wanting to, to have that transparency. Should I then be getting the money back from my municipality, or is it fine that I don't claim the same as my other board members for this at the beginning, and then moving forward, we just move forward on that?
Yeah, so I can. My recommendation is that the board reimburse you accordingly for the amounts that it's due, which would include which in this case would include items that you would have previously claimed in the municipality, and then you would address that with your municipality in terms of what the appropriate steps are to repay that or reduce a future expense within the municipality.
Okay. Yeah, and I can do that. And just, I think we just should have transparency and make sure that we're all kind of doing the same thing. And then the other question that I have just in regards to the wording of this and looking at the honorarium, and yes, I agree, we should be, submitting that on a monthly basis. I'm assuming the honorarium would then start for February 1st as opposed to January 26th, or how would we be doing that?
I think that's fair. The only business that took place in January would have been the press conference on January 28th. But it's certainly a discussion for this group here, I think. So in terms of when you want to make the honorary effective.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted that to be clear as to that way we know how we're starting that off. Thanks.
Okay, Mayor Ralph, then. Councillor Laurie.
Councillor Laurie's had his hand up before me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Laurie.
Sure, I wouldn't have minded if you went first, but that's all right. I'll go ahead. I just have a question in regards to some clarity here. So it shows the difference between the chair and the directors, which again, 100% agree with. It does not, however, show anything in respect to if the vice chair acts as chair. So as an example, for a meeting per diem, if the vice chair is acting as the chair, I would expect that the vice chair should be eligible for the chair per diem on that meeting. As well as it doesn't spell out anything in relation to the subcommittees. I didn't really see it brought in there too much as to whether there's anything different on the committee side of things, which I don't think there should be in respect to the chairs and vice chairs of the committees. But I'm just curious as to if we need to add that in there for clarity in respect to the vice chair of the board acting as chair, and in respect to the committees, the subcommittees, and the different positions on those.
Hal, do you want me to take a crack at that to start?
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
So yeah, for committees, you're right. So committees, it certainly counts as a meeting, but it doesn't have a differentiator for whether you're attending the meeting as chair, vice chair, or just a director at that committee meeting. So yeah, you're right on that. The question of vice chair actually chairing a meeting, we didn't make, that wasn't developed that way in terms of the kind of the policy that we worked through and approved as an interim board. And I think part of the thinking about that was the chair is being differently compensated because of the extra level of briefings and work that's done in advance of meetings, as not necessarily as much for them chairing the meeting itself, because at the end of the day, the time is very similar, but we're certainly open to looking at a differential rate for a vice chair when chairing a meeting, assuming that in that case, they may also be doing the prep work and doing all the briefings in advance. But it was, it was more reflective of the work done before sitting in the chair, so to speak, than the meeting itself.
Yeah, and that's kind of my context behind it, is that, yes, it's one thing if the chair falls ill and is unable to chair that specific day, but traditionally the chair would know in advance and would call on the vice chair, who would then have to put forth that additional time for the briefings and preparatory work that would be involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're certainly open to that, but again, it was the differentiating rate was more reflective of the work going into a meeting necessarily than the hours spent at a meeting.
So good catch, Councillor Laurie. Well, we'll debate that, I think, in the meeting here. And if you want to make an amendment, Councillor Laurie, feel free to do so, and then we can debate it as a board. Mayor Ralph, comment?
I just wanted to make a comment in regards to the determination on the mileage rate. That's actually done through the Treasury Board, the Federal Treasury Board. It's not through Canada Revenue. They're the ones that actually post out the mileage rates for each province, as well as each state in the U.S. for anything to do with mileage and meals, etc. So I just again wanted to clarify that it is the Treasury Board. So if we're going to identify it in our policy, we should be identifying it correctly. That's just a comment that I would make. And I do agree with Councillor Laurie as far as if the vice chair was going to do the meeting as a chair that day, that it should be compensated for accordingly. The chair does get the additional honorarium to cover off a lot of the other extra time that they would spend. But when it comes down to the chair doing a meeting, etc., the vice chair would have to spend the time getting prepped, etc., just no different than the chair would be. So just supporting Councillor Laurie's comments. Thanks.
Fair enough. Just a question in relation to that, Josh, Al, when you guys did some research, I know you took a look at the EMRB. Was there clauses in their sort of honorarium policy that address this sort of question?
It was actually mixed, and so we saw across both Alberta and transit entities a mix of them. I would say, certainly examples you could point to where the vice chair did receive a honorarium at a different level for that reason. But we certainly didn't see one that spoke to, when performing the duties of the chair, whomever sits in that role receives that rate. I think that would be a nuance, and that certainly I think we could produce language for, but that would be something that we haven't seen, because I guess in theory, if the vice chair is similarly not available and a director that cycle is kind of in that role, they would be doing the prep work and the briefing. And so maybe there's an opportunity to kind of identify that it's the person in the role of the chair for the meeting that is compensated that way.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll if Councillor Laurie puts forward such an amendment, we'll debate it, and then we'll give you direction in terms of crafting the appropriate language. How's
Great.
that?
Perfect.
Okay. Any other questions of Josh and Al on this one? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Laurie, would you like to bring forward an amendment?
Just from a process perspective, I don't believe the motion's on the floor yet.
It's not yet. I was just sort of just asking, and then
Yeah,
and then certainly, and if you are willing to do that, then I'll ask somebody to move it, and then I'll go to you to make an amendment.
yeah, I would like to propose that amendment, so.
All right. Okay, other than Councillor Laurie, what's up?
I'll put the main motion on the floor.
Fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Walters, you want to read it in then?
Yeah, I'll move that the board approve the schedule of board compensation as presented at the March 18th, 2021 board meeting, effectively retroactively to January 26, 2021, when the commission legally formed under the Municipal Government Act, and that it be reviewed in conjunction with the governance review as per Part 6 of the governance bylaw.
Fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Laurie, you have some language for your amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to propose an amendment in respect to the chair honoraria that from a language, and we can fine tune this a little bit, that any director acting in the capacity of a chair for a board meeting would be eligible to receive the per diem rate of the chair for the applicable meeting.
Okay. Mr. Shores, does that meet the intent of what Councillor is put forward?
Yes, I think it does, and we can wordsmith some language for the minutes in terms of, I really see it potentially, if we look at the slide, as really being perhaps another sort of notation just next to the chair's per diem. We could just put a star on that says essentially what Councillor Laurie said. I've got a note of it.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Shores. Mayor Ralph.
So there's a amended motion on the floor. So the initial motion, not amended motion. If I wanted to make a friendly amendment to the second motion, is it possible?
Well, okay.
I guess my friendly amendment would be, all I'm looking at is changing January 26, 2021 to February 1st.
That would be to the main motion, so we'd probably have to wait till we're done dealing with the amendment.
Yeah.
Correct?
Okay, I wasn't quite sure, so.
Okay, yeah, let's deal with the amendment, which is basically to allow someone who is acting as chair to receive the chair honorarium for the meeting. Okay, if there's no more questions, then I'll accept the amendment and I'll let Councillor Laurie speak to it, and then we can debate it. Any questions before I continue? Seeing none, then I accept that motion. Councillor Laurie, do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Chair Broadhead. Just in respect to the motion, as was mentioned by our working group team, and there is a lot more work that traditionally goes in from the board chair in preparatory for the meeting, getting everything lined up, understanding what else coming forward, providing input, and so on and so forth. Therefore, I think it'd only be fair that it be recognized that any director, be it the vice chair or other, who is asked to step into the chair role for a board meeting should be compensated to the same level as the chair would be. So I think it's just the fairness, accountability, and clarity that we have that in there, and I'd like to see that move forward so that everybody is compensated correctly for the time and energy put in.
Thank you very much. Any debate on that motion? Seeing none. Anything further to close then, Councillor Laurie?
No, nothing further.
Okay, on the amendment then. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. back to the main motion as amended now. Understanding the amendment is in place. Councillor Walters, this is the motion that you put on the floor. Mayor Ralph, you had a suggestion?
I would just like to put forth a friendly amendment to actually just make it effective February 1st, 2021, just so it's an actual month cutoff.
Okay. Before we enter into the debate on that amendment, any questions around that? In so doing, basically what we've taken away is the press conference as a bona fide meeting. So that would be the impact of the motion, the impact of the motion. Okay, Councillor Walters.
So I know it's proposed as a friendly amendment. I'm not sure that it is. So maybe if I could just ask, what's the problem with it being January 26th? And so maybe firstly, why was it written as January 26th? Is that because that's when we received?
Yeah, the January 26th just
MO.
reflects legal formation, right, or the ministerial order, and so that's what that's the date of kind of inception, and so that's why that date was used to kind of reflect the beginning of the work, because the honorarium is supposed to reflect the work you do outside of the board meeting time, and so the thinking was that work began that day.
Well, I'd be just comfortable to leave it there, like through the chair to Mayor Ralph. I'm not sure what since it's a retroactive, it refers to it being retroactive, why it matters that it's a month cutoff. I guess I'm a little confused by that.
As I said, it was just more on a calendar basis of a February 1st cutoff, like February 1st starting, but I'm not gonna
I would
die on the mountain over it. So that's why it was a friendly amendment. So
I just leave it, but that's just me.
Councillor McKenzie, just commentary or questions on the change?
Yeah, just basically, I think it's fine leaving it at 26. I know I spoke earlier to it in regards to the monthly honorarium, but I think that's just more of an administrative task. I just wanted to make sure that we're not receiving an honorarium for January when there was only 4 days in there. And so it was an administratively comment that I had made earlier. So just for clarity on that.
Fair enough. Councillor Harris.
I finally got back. Sorry for the delay. I think I know what's going on. So when you call the vote, I think I should be able to participate.
Fair enough. Welcome back. You who have now been vaccinated. There's a certain glow about you, Councillor Harris, that what didn't happen earlier now. Anyway, so did I hear correctly then, Mayor Ralph, that you're withdrawing your request for the friendly amendment?
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Then back to you, Councillor Walters. Accept your motion. Any opening comments?
I have none. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Any debate on this? Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion that's before us, please raise your hand. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you again, everybody. And we're moving along now to board meeting schedule.
Thanks very much. And so this one is pretty self-evident. And so I think really just want to highlight that, with that implementation plan that you all saw, and I think a few of you noted that there's a lot on the go to get things moving. We want a regular cadence of meetings, but trying to set it up at the outset so it's monthly, and recognizing this is complemented by the committee work that all 8 of you will be doing too, to move things forward. And so we've avoided, I think, municipal election. tried to avoid any other kind of standing dates in the regional municipal calendar, and I think this is where we're landed.
Okay, are those old hands or new hands? Mine's an old hand. I'll take mine down. All right, seeing new hands then, Councillor Harris and then Councillor Laurie.
So what is the protocol going to be for, the election is on October the 18th. So will existing board members attend the meeting on the 21st of October? Like I probably will not be running, so I wouldn't be elected in any regard. So if that's the case, what happens on the 21st?
So I think that as noted in our bylaws, it's, you're a councillor till your term expires, or that the municipality appoints somebody else in your place, which they can do certainly at any time. So if you are still the councillor and identified by the municipality as as the member representing the RTSC, EMTSC, sorry, then you would probably have that last meeting, is my expectation.
Yeah, so I guess it comes down, and it's a legal interpretation maybe, is whether we are officially off on the date of the election, or whether on the date that the new council is sworn into office, which is at the organizational meeting sometime after the 18th. So if that's the case, then the 21st is fine. But like in my case, I won't be running, most likely. And so I would cease to exist as a councillor at some point. And so the question is, when is that?
I think Bill will validate this, but the expectation is that you cease to exist as a councillor, not in general, when your term is up, not on election night.
Okay.
That is correct. It is when your term ceases to, when your term terminates, then you cease to be a director.
So when is that this year?
I would have to look at that. So I can answer that question so your retirement can be.
Leave after the organizational date.
I will confirm that.
Stranger things have been known to happen, but who knows? Thanks.
The levity was good, Councillor Harris. I don't know that you cease to exist, though. Councillor Laurie and then Councillor Finstad.
Thank you, Chair. And my question rolls along this similar line. And I think we have to look beyond technicality, because I would tend to agree that technically our terms don't end until the next organizational meeting. If a disaster were to happen or an emergency were to happen after the election date, we still would technically be the acting councillors. But I think given that we have the opportunity to avoid this in a non-emergent situation, I think it might be best to do so. And with that, I would suggest that we maybe look for an alternative date for that October 21st meeting, either bringing it forward a week so it actually occurs before the municipal election, or potentially delaying it, even a week or two until all the member municipalities have had the chance to have their organizational meeting. I think just optically, it just would be much better to try and avoid potentially having any councillors who maybe either did not run or were not successful in re-election still sitting around a table representing the municipality at that point in time, especially given these are all publicly broadcast and available meetings.
Yeah, good point. Let's think about that. I kind of like the 14th, moving it ahead, but Councillor Finstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my concern too was the proximity to the actual election day, but realizing that you were still in place as a councillor until your municipality has its inauguration meeting. And the problem is that many municipalities will have different inauguration dates, and it could cause some confusion. So I concur with the chair that October 14th might be a more appropriate date. That way, the only ones that we know won't be there are the ones that have indicated their intent not to run. So we could have a normal board meeting, if you wish, that full week before the 21st.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Finstad. Yeah, we would like to get them before the councillors actually cease to exist, so. Sorry, I'm not gonna let that go there, Councillor Harris. That's a good point.
I promise to finish my sentences in the future when I cease to exist as an elected official.
Well, let's throw it open. What if we were to just scratch out October 21st and go to October 14th, recognizing that that's 6 months away. What do people think of that? Would that be a reasonable move? Councillor Laurie.
Thanks, Chair. And I just saw admin had put it in the chat. So there is an EMRB meeting that morning that I believe is scheduled till 12:30. So it wouldn't be a conflict for the afternoon, but we may just want to consider a different time for the meeting, maybe bump it back by an hour in order to give anybody who is attending the EMRB meeting opportunity to travel between, grab lunch, etc.
Yeah, fair enough. What can we do something as sort of flexible as saying the afternoon of October 14th to minimize conflicts with the morning EMRB meeting? Josh, can you work? Al, can you work language around that?
Yeah, I think the one thing is that as you note, while you're not necessarily approving, you can see the times allocated in the bottom there, kind of. Maybe we'll just have to do a caveat to that recommendation about the time being consistent for all the other meetings. One of the things we did want to do is make sure that everyone gets in the rhythm of knowing, kind of when meetings are happening. And so that was part of the intent, to make it kind of the same week of the month, same time of the day. But we certainly recognize that kind of in and around an election, it's a rarity because of the cycle, but that we'd have to be flexible there.
I think what's important to note is the bylaws do speak to meeting dates and notice in terms of changes of meetings. So the fact that there's a schedule, what I'd encourage is the fact that there's a schedule in front of you here now doesn't mean that one of these dates may not change for some unforeseeable reason going forward as well. So I think it's good to note the 21st. I would encourage it to be a week earlier as opposed to a week later based on some of the requirements within the bylaws when it comes to financial reporting and elements like that. But I think also recognizing that that these dates may adjust over time, given the proper notice within the procedural bylaws to support the business of the board or any potential conflicts too.
Yeah, so maybe to that point, just noting it as the 14th accomplishes what you need, because you have, the bylaw provides you the ability to kind of set times and dates with notice.
Okay. Councillor McKenzie.
Sorry, I was just about to lower my hand because that's what I was going to say. I don't know if we need to get that specific, but thank you for dealing with that.
Okay. Councillor Harris.
Is there anything in terms of conflict with our two standing committees? I just reviewed the terms of reference that Haley had sent to me for the HR and Comp committee, and I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think there's a HR and Comp committee that week before the election. So it's in that week of the 14th. So are there so many clear days we have to have between, those subcommittee meetings and a board meeting?
It's not required. So I think what we would do is take a look at, with this change, we would just take a look at the meetings around that date to make sure we've got sufficient time between committee meetings and board meetings and adjust accordingly with a scale down.
I just raised that as a clarification, make sure we're not putting ourselves in a box, but that makes eminent sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Tinny, with that change then, October 21st to the 14th as amended. Would somebody care to make that motion? Councillor Finstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the board adopt the board meeting schedule for 2021 as amended at the March 18th, 2021 board meeting.
Thank you. Accept that motion. Any questions? Opening comments, Councillor Finstad?
No, none.
Okay, any debate on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Over to Josh, Haley. Al.
Yeah, I'll take this. Thanks. Just another quick one for information, and we mentioned it earlier that EMTSC.ca is live, and so want to highlight a few things. Is first want to of course thank Haley for her good work in pulling this together and making sure that we have a very effective but cost effective website to put information out there. A few things I want to highlight and bring your attention to is I think the one that's of maybe most relevance and of interest is the meeting calendar page. And you kind of see the icon that depicts that in the middle of this slide. There people can find agendas, minutes, the packages that come with the agendas, and also even a recording of the meeting. And so certainly it's all there and available for people. It also gives anyone who's following, even whether it be board members, municipalities, or the public, ability to see what's coming and schedule a bit in terms of committees and board meetings. The other thing of note there is, I think of maybe the most immediate relevance is the contact page. So there is an info@emtsc.ca email field there, and so people can submit questions, concerns there too, and that's being monitored and they'll get a response. And so there is some content there too around kind of latest news and updates that will provide an overview of the EMTSC in terms of its mission mandate. All of you obviously featured on that as the board, and all your lovely headshots. And so all of that's available for anyone who wants to follow the proceedings. But I think most notably is anything that's dealt with, that you vote on, that you deliberate on in your meetings is there and posted, and meeting notices will be posted there too.
Fair enough. Thank you. Just as a comment on my part, I haven't had a chance to take a look at the entire website, but I was just a question: does our video that the region put together in support of the commission, does it appear on the website?
Haley, I'm going to ask you use a lifeline on that one. Is the video there at this point?
Yes, it is on the homepage.
Front page.
Perfect.
Oh, outstanding. See, like I said, the only page I actually went to was the calendar page, and it had what I needed. So that was the only
Yeah, I
one
think that's what people need. The other thing I just want to note is, like a lot of the decisions I think that you're making right now, this is another one that doesn't bind a CEO or yourselves as a board to any kind of long-term commitment in terms of cost or a contractual one. And so I think it does the part, it's functional, it looks good, gets the information out there, but it certainly is not something that binds you financially or otherwise. And so it kind of allows you that flexibility as the organization matures.
Thank you. Councillor Walters?
Sorry, that was a legacy hand.
Legacy hand, okay. All right, any questions as related to the website? Thanks for bringing this and showing it to us, appreciate that. Councillor Monkoff-Swain?
Yeah, thanks. Just more just a comment than anything. So great job getting this up and running. It looks awesome, and yeah, the calendar section is important for folks. And so yeah, just it looks very professional. I didn't expect anything less, but great job.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so we do have a motion in relation to this information item. Someone who hasn't made a motion yet? Councillor McKenzie?
Sure, I'll move that the board accepts as information the EMTSC website is live as presented at the March 18th, 2021 board meeting.
Thank you very much. I accept that motion. Do you want to make any comments?
For me, yeah, I had checked it out. I had heard about it yesterday in our committee meeting, and it looks great. The only comment that I will say is I had a hard time finding it, because if you just type in the EMTSC, it doesn't pop up at all in the searching for that I could find. And then even if you type in EMTSC.ca, it didn't come up. You actually had to type in www, and that was on my phone and both my iPad. So I don't know if that's something within the back scenes of website design and how things are searched.
I think it's in part because we're not paying for it to be at the top of a search right now. And so,
Okay.
yeah, maybe it's worth saying it kind of publicly while people listen. You're best to type in the full address domain name with the www.emtsc.ca.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no, but once I got on it, I'm excited. It looks great.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please raise a hand. And again, I believe that's unanimous. All right, now we do have a motion to go in camera. Councillor Walters, did you want to make the motion?
Sure. I'll move that the board move in camera in accordance with the provisions of Division 2, exceptions to disclosure of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Fair enough. Let me call the question. All those in favor of moving in camera, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. That's unanimous. We'll give a couple of minutes to allow that to happen. Haley, I believe you're giving us a breakout room, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So just please hang tight, and when you receive a pop-up that says join breakout room, please make sure you click yes and not leave the meeting. Thanks everyone, just hang tight.
I can be the first to ask. Should we have seen it already?
No, not yet, sorry.
Okay.
Just
No,
one
that's okay.
second.
What a crazy day.
So how's your arm feel, Gord? Is it stiffening up or not?
No, it's not. It looks like we can move now. So John.
So we're live now, right, Haley?
Yes, we are.
All
Okay.
right. Well, board, thank you. We have reconvened in public. We need someone to move the motion that is on the board.
I can make that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Monkoff-Swain. You want to read it into the record?
Yeah, I move that the board accept the material and discussion as presented in camera at the March 18, 2021 board meeting as information.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question. We'll raise the hand function and call all in favor. Okay, I see 6 hands, 4 virtual and 2 live. Okay, everybody's there. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. All right, it's been quite a meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Al, Josh, anything further before I can adjourn the meeting?
No, nothing from us. Josh had to leave for a prior commitment, but we're all good. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank members of the board for coming and for Bill and Samantha and Aislinn. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll see you again. It was nice to meet you. All right. Take care, everyone, and we'll catch you later. Bye now.
No worries.